Hello, it's Pam again, and I am back here today with some quilting information for you. I have been kind of obsessed with this block that I've been making into a whole quilt top, and I wanted to tell you about it. This is not a purchase pattern. It is available on the YouTube channel by the designer that put it together, and she has her channel is called Revelation Quilts, and the name of this particular design is called Trippy Triangles. So you can search for that on YouTube. It's been an interesting block, just partly because it's rectangular instead of square, although the rectangle is made of two squares put together. It makes a little bit different size. I also am making this completely out of fabric that I already have. So I've just been cutting that out from picking that out from my supply, my collection of fabric as I go. It's been very easy to make up maybe 20 of these blocks and then put those aside and then keep adding to that depending on how long I have for a sewing period. The dimensions that I am using, which are a little bit different than the tutorial on Revelation Quilts, are these. I started with 6.5 inch squares. My trim down size is 5 inches by 5 inches. I come up with a finished block that's 4.5 by 9. I calculated that if I made 180 blocks, I would come down to a quilt that's about 81 by 90 inches, and that fits well for the size that I want it to be. So there are just a few very easy steps on this to keep track of, and I'm going to just explain to you a few tips that I picked up along the way. Now, these blocks, as I showed you in the first one, really play well with the light-dark theme, and this is one example of just the light versus dark. But you can also use two fabrics that are a contrast but maybe are medium toned, such as these two, because this one has stripes, this one has circles. They're going to contrast with each other because of the design in them rather than the light versus dark. So the first part of it is, after you get those squares cut out and stacked up to be able to be used, is to cut out the center triangle. I have found that by using some markings on my mat, I can do this without marking my fabric at all. My block is 6.5 inches wide, which makes it the edge on this line. 3 1/4 is the center point, which is a little bit harder to train your eye to see. So I put these little arrows, adhesive arrows on my mat on the 3 1/4 line. And if I have this line up on the side, I know that the block is going to be centered. I can use that for putting the triangle ruler on there. This is the mark that I have made for the height of my triangle. I can see the center line is on that arrow, and this point of the triangle is pointing up towards that arrow. Then I can go ahead and cut this like so, and I will have the block centered like I want it to be. After I've done the sewing on those blocks, I will have a unit that looks like this. Now at this point, this needs to be trimmed up into a square, and I want to have this triangle in the center of that square, not moved to the right or left. I also want to have enough fabric left at the peak of the triangle so it doesn't get snipped off in the seam allowance. So I want greater than 1/4 inch fabric there. But I also need to have the bottom of the triangles the same on every one so that I can get this center seam with a good alignment on the sides of the triangle so that matches. In order to do that, I made some marks on my ruler again. I'm learning that doing that little step helps me a lot with my quilting and cutting, the cutting accuracy. So for this example, my trim down size is going to be 5. So I have put this tape on here that is on the 5-inch plan, 5-inch line, to make sure that I can easily visualize that. I use this tape. It's called OmniGrid Glow Line tape, that on top of my ruler, so I know where that 5-inch line is. Leaves no residue or stickiness on the ruler. I've also used these little arrows on some of the highlighted points on my ruler. These are called GEasy ruler stickers. They're from Gudrun Erla of GE Designs, and they can be found on her website. You get a package of 3 sheets in 3 colors, and these are just little adhesive arrows that can be taken off. They're reusable for several times before they lose their stickiness. So that's another good marking tool, as well as the good old blue masking tape. So with that in mind, I can now center my ruler. So the center line is on the point of my triangle. The 5-inch line is on the fabric. The base of the triangle, these little arrows here are going to hit the seam line right at where the base of the triangle will be. So then I can go ahead and cut this. Flip it around. Now the edges that I just cut are on that 5-inch line now. Make sure you adjust it so that you can see that. Then these little arrows should mark where those seam lines are going to hit again, so they will match up with the other half of the block. There you have one half, and after the other piece gets trimmed, you will have a match at the center when you sew your center seam. It will be like this, as you can see. Follow the pressing instructions that are given in the tutorial. That is, press all of your seams one direction on the back of these triangle units like this. Then when you do turn them over, flip them upside down to match, they will nest very easily right there at the center. So pressing, get your lines centered vertically. If you have a striped fabric like this, you can choose to have the stripes horizontal or vertical. It doesn't matter. If you want to give a really little extra good touch to your design, center the square that you cut on the center line of a motif or the center line of something significant in the fabric. This is an example of a time when I didn't center it, so this would look better if I were to have this row moved over a 1/4 of an inch to be in the center of this block. It would just make a neater look. So if you do center it, it will make your quilt come out looking like you are a real pro. This one I did get centered. So always use the same sequence when you're cutting. She explains that in the tutorial. Cut the right side of the triangle first and then the left side. Cut up here and then back here, and that's when a rotating cutting mat would make it safer for you. And then when you're sewing, you sew the left side first and then the right side. I pressed the center seams open on my blocks. The tutorial shows them pressed in one direction. That works too. I also press the seams open between blocks and between rows. It's just my personal preference that way. Okay, so that kind of explains the process and the scope of this project, and it will be easy for you to try it out, even if you want to try a different size of square, a different angle of the triangle. Instead of 30, you can try 45, 22.5, any of those that you think might work out for you, and see how you can size your blocks to put into your quilt. So thank you. Give it a try. Make sure you watch that tutorial and let me know if you have any questions or comments. I will put links to the few items that I did talk about in the description of this video. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.